ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. So welcome to our weekly session on Bhagavad Gita. We will continue on chapter 13. Last time we covered verse number 5. I think we'll have to go a little bit backwards and go back into this chapter a little more, and then we will take verse number 6. Now, this chapter actually starts, the first part of the verse is Idam Sariram Kshetram. Ye Sarir Kshetra hai. This is what the beginning of this chapter is. And then Lord Krishna is explaining what is Kshetra. Now, verse number 5 and 6 are explaining the scope of Kshetra. Kshetra, what is Kshetra and how it operates, what are the modifications that happen in this Kshetra. And then he also talks about what is Kshetragya. So, verse number 4, which said that this element, what is Kshetra and what is Kshetragya, has been told by variety of people, by large number of saints. It has also been told in Vedas. It has also been written in Brahma Sutra, and various people who have realized this knowledge have come out and told this time and again. And he says, I am repeating that. Now in verse number 5, he gives some of the fundamentals of what is Kshetra. Now if we look at the Sanskrit wording of this, Mahabhutani Ahankaro Buddhi Avyakt. Now we started with Avyakt, that the whole thing is in the form of complete what you call dormant stage. The whole universe is in pralaya, in dormant state. It's like we are in deep sleep, something like that. And from there the first element comes, that is the Avyakt state. From that comes Mahat Tattva. Mahat Tattva has been referred here as Buddhi because it is also called intelligence. In Vedic language, Mahat Tattva in some places has also been referred as intelligence. So this is the word which has been used here, Buddhi. And then he comes Ahankaro. That is, Ahankar is the realization or cosmic ego or cosmic realization of existence. So that is the third element which comes into play. And then Mahabhut, these are basically the 5 elements in very subtle form. That is what we call Shabd, then Spars, then Roop, then Taste, and then finally the smell. So these are the 5 elements which exist in the form of Tanmatra. So this is the first part of this verse number 4. Avyakt, Mahat Tattva, Ahankar, and then comes Tanmatras, 5 Tanmatras. And then from there he says, Indriyani Daskam, the 10 senses, they originate from there. And we discussed how they originate from the sattvic element of each of these 5 Tanmatras. Come the Gyanendriya, that is our sense of hearing, sense of touch, sense of sight, sense of taste, and sense of smell. And then the 5 Karmendriya comes from there as well. They come from the Rajas part. Why Rajas part? Because Karmendriya act. They are involved into action. And action means Rajas. Wherever the action involved, that means Rajas. So the Rajas part gives birth to the 5 Karmendriyas. Now for 5 Karmendriyas to repeat are, first is the speech when we talk, which is connected again to the Shabd, that is Tanmatra of Shabd. Then comes the hands, that also in the sense the body moves that way. Now that is the spurs. When we touch somebody, we touch with hands. So that is the second tanmatra, spars tanmatra, where the hand comes into existence. And then the third one is the sight. Now the sight tanmatra actually gives birth to the feet. Why feet? Now this question arises, the feet have something to do with roop. Yes, if you realize that we have 2 feet, animals have 4 feet, some of the insects have 6 feet or 8 feet, so that decides their form. Actually, the number of feet in certain ways decide the form of a particular creature, and that is why the roop is associated with feet. And then the fourth is the taste, that is the taste where the water comes into play, and the water comes out from our sexual organ, and that is why this is associated with the sense of taste. And then evacuation, that is the sense of smell, because when we evacuate, the smell also comes out, and that is how these sense organs are related to all these 5 tanmatras. So 5 tanmatras give birth to 5 jnanendriyas and then 5 karmendriyas. And then the what we call tamas part of these 5 tanmatras, they give birth to the 5 sthul or gross elements, that is the akash, vayu, agni, jal or prithvi. So these are the 5 gross elements which are born out of the tamas part of these 5 tanmatras. So this is what he has explained here, and this is very precisely mentioned in this verse. There is one more thing here. Dasekam, there is das ekam. There is another element involved here, das ekam, das and one more. Now one more is what? One more is the manas. Manas, or we also call it antakaran, which contains your mind, your intellect and your ego. Now that is one more which comes out of the collective or the collective power of all the 5 tanmatras give birth to this particular element. So this is an additional element which comes into play. Now if we analyze this, these are 24 parts of Kshetra. 24 parts. Let's count them, how they are 24. First is Avyakt. Second is Mahattat. Third is Ahankar. Fourth is Ekam, that is Antakaran. And then we have 5 senses of perception, 5 senses of action, and 5 gross elements in the nature. So these are 15, and then 5 tanmatras, that is the subtle elements. So these make 20, and plus 4, these are 24 elements of nature. 24 elements of Kshetra, which act and react, interact and create this whole universe in which we revolve. This is what this verse means here. This is a very small verse, but this explains all this in a very precise form. Now we go to the next verse, which is again part of Kshetra. Now next verse is तथा इच्छा द्वेष सुख दुख स्थूल देह का पिंड चेतना और धृति, इस प्रकार विकारों के सहित ये क्षेत्र संक्षेप में कहा गया है. So these are additional elements which come into play. These are not evolutionary elements. These are the vikars. These are the modifications which happen in the Kshetra. What are the modifications? Ichha, द्वेष, सुख, दुख, स्थूल देह का पिंड, चेतना और धृति. These are the modifications. Now let us start with स्थूल देह का पिंड. स्थूल देह का पिंड is our body, which means it has been put together all these 24 elements, and this is what the body is. The 5 gross elements also make the body, but then the 5 sense organs of Gyanendriya, 5 sense organs of 5 motors, that is the Karmendriya. Then we have also the subtle body inside, and the Tanmatras in subtle form. And we also have all the other 4 elements which have been described in the previous verse. So all the 24 elements are there in this Sthul Dehaka Pind. That is the word which has been used here. Now that body contains all these 24 elements, and I'll explain that little later how they are. So that is the Sthul Dehaka Pind. Now, Ichha Dvesh Sukh Dukh. Now what happens is that when our body interacts with the physical world outside, then 2 things happen. Out of that interaction, either we get Sukh or we get Dukh. In some places, you get unhappiness because of the interaction outside. In some places, you get happiness. It depends on the outcome and your perception. Some people may say good words about you, you feel happy, it gives you happiness. Some people might come and abuse you, and therefore it gives you unhappiness. Similarly, some object, physical object, give you satisfaction. Some object may not give you satisfaction. So Dukh and Sukh, in broader form, these are generated by the body's interaction with the outside world, outside sansar. That is how the Dukh Sukh are generated. Now what happens is, if you get pleasure out of your interaction, then you develop desire to have that more. So that is what is called Ichha. You have desire, you have a sort of attachment, and that attachment gives you another desire to have that. So this is how it happens. And Dvesh, if that particular interaction, if it gives you unhappiness, then you don't like it, you hate it, and that gives you Dvesh. So Dvesh and Ichha, they are generated because of the Dukh and Sukh, which happens in this world because of your body's interaction with the rest of the universe, with the rest of the sansar. So this is what Ichha, Dvesh, Dukh, Sukh, this is how it explains. Now there are other words, Chetna and Dhrati. Now this is something perplexing, because Lord Krishna is saying even Chetna of your body is also part of Kshetra. Now this Chetna is not the consciousness or Chaitanya which we talk about. So it is very important to understand it fully. This Chetna is the Chetna through which our sense organs associate with the physical objects outside. That Chetna, for example, you see a flower, you like the flower, now your sense organ have an association with the flower because of that Chetna. That Chetna is he is talking about here. He is not talking about the Chaitanya, because from the Chaitanya you can still see that you have some feeling for this flower. Now that Chetna which connects you to the flower could be felt through your Chaitanya separately. When you see a flower and you like the flower, you have a sort of current flowing between you and the flower. Now that current you can feel inside your Chaitanya. So this Chetna is the what you call the body principle, the principle in which the body operates or connects with the gross objects in the outside world. When you connect with individuals, when you connect with certain other objects, which are millions and billions of objects in the world outside, those connections arise from this Chetna. Now that is the Chetna he is talking about here. And that Chetna is always there in the life principle or the body principle. Now next is Dhrati. Dhrati means you have become a sort of will. a strong will to achieve something. Now, what is that dhriti? Dhriti is basically, for example, if you get pleasure out of interaction from something, you develop a sort of a strong will to get it. Now that is the dhriti, and this dhriti gives rise to your desire to have it more, and also it will propel you to make efforts to acquire it. So the dhriti comes into play because of the sukha and dukha. If you get dukha out of some interaction with the outside world, in that case, the dhriti will tell you to desist, not to, accept it anymore. So that is also dhriti operating in that form. So the dhriti helps you in either acquiring in more quantity or to have detest. So these are the elements which are associated with your body. These elements which are referred in verse number 6, that is the Ichha, Dvesh, Sukh, Dukh, Sthul Deka Pind, Chetna and Dhriti, these are not evolutionary elements, these are modifications. Evolutionary elements are 24, which are mentioned in verse number 5. Those evolve from one after another, and those have very different qualities in the process of evolution. But here this is basically the modification of those 24 elements which takes place when we interact with the world. So these two verses explain what is Kshetra. Now, all this Kshetra goes quite a bit in our body. Now, we have not talked about Kshetragya so far. Now, Kshetragya we have to understand, because it is not explained in these two verses. Though he has talked about this and he will explain Kshetragya much later in the chapter. But we have to understand how Kshetra and Kshetragya operate together. This is very, very important. You see, what Lord Krishna said in the beginning, that Kshetragya is the observer and Kshetra is the observed. That is, Drashya is Kshetra, Drashta is Kshetragya. So in any state where something is Drashta and something is Drashya, the difference is Kshetra and Kshetragya. For example, I am observing a flower. Now, flower is the object and therefore it is Kshetra, and I as observer, including my eyes, that is Kshetragya. Now, then you say my whole body is Kshetragya. Yes, this is how we associate with the body. But when you go deeper, you will find you can differentiate slowly, go backward. Now you saw the flower with your eyes, but you can also feel that you can also see with your eyes with your mind. You can see your eyes with your mind. You can close your eyes and in your mind you can see your eyes. Now it means the eye has become now Kshetra and your mind has become Kshetragya. Then you can also observe your mind. Mind can also become object and mind can become Kshetra, because you go into deep meditation and you find that your Chaitanya is able to even see the mind. Mind can be observed with your Chaitanya. So the mind also become an object. Your intellect will also become an object, and your ahankar can also be observed by your Chaitanya. So all these three, the ekam which is referred in this, that is the antakaran part or manas part, that also becomes a Kshetra, and your pure consciousness becomes the observer. So if you go backward in this journey, starting from the gross objects outside, then coming to your own sense organs, and then coming to your mind, and then coming to your intellect, and then coming to your own self, you will realize that all others can be converted into objects. But the real observer inside, the Chaitanya, cannot be converted into object. And that is the point which is called Param Atma. The word Param means you cannot go backward beyond that point. So when the backward journey stops, the Param Atma comes into play. So we all the time have association of observer and observed in our body system, and that is the one which causes all the problems. That is why we associate ourselves with Chaitanya. We all the time consider body as me. This is how the problem arises, this illusion arises because of this fact that your Kshetrajna has an association with body parts, and because of that you consider your body and your body parts as yourself. That detachment you have to do through a backward journey in the process. And the backward journey can start from the stool, the gross objects outside. We took a case of flower. You can take any other object outside, and that object is Kshetra. You are Kshetrajna in that case. And when you come down to your mind or your ear and your other sense organs, you can feel that you can also observe them through your Chaitanya inside, and therefore they are all objects, they are all drashya, and those drashya obviously means that they are Kshetra, not Kshetrajna. There is only one Kshetrajna, that is called Paramatma, or that Paramatma means you cannot go backward into that. You cannot, that Paramatma cannot become drashya. That cannot be observed. That is the ultimate observer. So this is what the distinction is between the combination of Kshetrajna and Kshetra and the pure Kshetrajna. When Lord Krishna says that I am the Kshetrajna in all the Kshetra, he is referring there to the Param Atma, he is referring to the ultimate drashta, which is able to see all the drashya, including the body and the mind and intellect. He is referring to that. But when we are observing the world outside, some of our body elements get mixed up with the Kshetrajna and give an impression that we are the observer, this body is the observer, this sense is the observer, and that causes all the illusion in our system. That is where this Maya plays its role. The Maya plays its role because the Kshetra and Kshetrajna in our body, they get mixed up and they give an illusion to us that the body is also Kshetrajna. So this is what we have to understand very clearly in this part of Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Once we can identify Kshetrajna completely, then we can reach Paramatma. Then we can identify ourselves with Paramatma. This is also called what you call principle of identification. You know, the theory of identification or principle of identification. Now, this principle of identification is the root cause when we have this confusion whether my body is me or whether I'm separate from the body. So once slowly you try to go backward in this journey, you will find that there's only one observer, ultimate observer, and that is the pure Chaitanya, and not the body parts. Sometimes these body parts give an illusion because of the association of Kshetrajna with them, and that is because what you call theory of identification, the Kshetrajna and Kshetra, they mix with each other and give an impression that the whole thing is, drashta, which is not correct. So this fine distinction we have to understand, and also the distinction that this word Chetana which has been used here, it is not the Chaitanya which we are talking about. This Chetana is only in respect of the objects outside. because our five senses of perception are linked to the five gross elements in the nature. They originate from the same tanmatras, and that is why this association stays there. Our sense organs, when they identify these five gross objects outside, obviously that Chetana is created between the two, and that is what he is referring to Chetana in this particular verse. So this is extremely important to understand all this. Now there are a few other things which we need to understand in this chapter. Now, Dukh and Sukh, we came to that Vikar part, Dukh and Sukh. How Dukh and Sukh works together. You see, the Dukh happens because of the interaction with the outside world. If the results are favorable to us according to our liking, then it is Sukh. If they are not according to our liking, then it becomes Dukh. So Dukh and Sukh has nothing to do with our own self. This is the interaction with the outside world and our perception of that interaction which creates Dukh and Sukh. Dukh and Sukh do not exist in the ultimate pure form. If you go back to the Chaitanya, which is absolutely neutral, which is eternal, which is, without any vikar, without any modification, that Chaitanya cannot have this Dukh and Sukh. Dukh and Sukh is the result because of the modifications that take place because of this body's interaction with the outside world. And that is the cause of Dukh and also of Sukh. And anything which gives you Sukh will also give you Dukh, because the very nature of this universe is duality. And that duality arises because of this modification, because of the Vikar. Vikar is an essential element of Maya. This Vikar gives two extremes and all the scale between the two extremes. So when you look at the day and night, and when you look at the Sukh and Dukh, and when you look at Mitra and Satru, that is the friend and enemy, all this is because of this Vikar in the 24 elements of this field in which we are playing. So we are playing in this field now. The field is made of 24 elements and we keep playing into that field. Like a farmer, plows the farm, he has the field, he cleans up, all the weeds, he plows it, and thereafter he puts the seeds, nice crops comes out of it. If he does not clean the weeds, if he does not plow it properly, and if he put the seed, obviously the seed will not germinate properly either. So exactly in the same way in the body, if we keep these 24 elements in their right place, if we keep them in clean state, whatever will germinate there will give us a good experience. But if the cleaning doesn't happen properly, if the plowing doesn't happen properly, if the seed is not of the good quality, then obviously the results will not be good, or they will not be to our liking. So this is exactly the way as we see in a field of a farmer. So this is the field. That is why the word Kshetra has been used by Lord Krishna to describe this. So this is the one principle of Kshetra. The second principle of Kshetra is that whatever you do, you will reap the harvest. Like whatever the farmer does in the field, he gets the result out of it. Similarly, whatever we do in this field, with the help of our 10 senses, that is the senses of action and senses of perception, and we apply our mind, intellect, all those elements we put into place, and we do certain activities, we yield, or we get the result out of it. The harvest comes out of that. So the field is managed well if it is kept clean, if the seed is good quality, that the action is of good quality, If the mind thinking in the right way, if the intellect is operating rightly, all these things will decide on the outcome of this field. So this is what we have to look at. We have to look at this field, how our field is, whether it has become full of weeds, whether it requires cleaning, whether it requires flowing, and all this sadhana which we do, yogas, we do meditation. A lot of people do a variety of other tapas. They put their body in a very difficult situations. Some people observe fasting, some people observe other austerities in life. All these austerities are designed to take the weeds out of this 24 element of this body. The weeds could be in the body, that can cause illness. The weeds could be in the mind, which can cause stress, which can cause other modifications in our system. So that is the first thing. We have to clean this body properly. All the weeds have to be out from this field of this body. Secondly, the seed quality has to be good. The seed quality depends on the action you are doing. Action is the seed. Now, if your action is with good intention, it has nothing to harm anybody else, then the quality of the crop which will happen in this field will be good. If the quality of the seed is bad, in the sense that you are doing that action to hurt somebody or to harm somebody or to detriment of some system, then obviously the quality of the outcome will not be good. So these actions which we do in a field which we see by a farmer in the field are also applicable to the body. Now, this is how we should look at our body. We should think about this. What are the cleaning are needed inside? If certain mental cleaning are needed, then we have to do that through meditation. If physical cleaning is needed, we can do it through Ayurveda and through yogas or some other system. If something else is needed, we should do the cleaning of the body so that the sand, the soil, everything is fertile inside, and whatever good seed we put, the crop will come out nicely. So this is what it explains. Now, one more point we must understand today is these 24 elements, how they evolve into the nature. We can also see their evolution in our own body. That is why we say whatever exists in the Brahmand also exists in this pind. Sthul Deh Ka Pind, that is the word which has been used by Lord Krishna. In Deh Ka Pind, we can also see the evolution of these 24 elements in the body. Now let me explain how it happens. When you have deep sleep in the night, you are in a position, or you can say you are in total dormant state. That is the vilay or pralay, state of pralay. That is the state. You are total deep sleep in the night. That is the state of pralay. You are absolutely dormant. You don't even know the bed on which you are sleeping. You don't know where you are. You have no idea of the location. You don't have any idea of your own self. Absolutely. You don't know your senses, your mind, your intellect, everything is completely dormant. So that is the state of pralaya in which we are when we are in deep sleep. Then we get up in the morning. If you observe first 1 or 2 minutes or a few seconds, you don't have a sense of your own self. You just get up and move here and there. You do things unknowingly. For a few seconds, you don't know where you are. You don't know who you are. Now that is the state which is similar to Mahat Tattva. Your movement is there. There is some intelligence which has come into existence, but that is not enough. You don't know who you are, where you are. That knowledge comes after a few seconds. So that state soon after the deep sleep, when you get up, that is the state of Mahat Tattva. Then slowly, you realize yourself, oh, I'm here, I'm sleeping on the bed. So that awareness of the self, that is the ahankar element, that you get to know who you are. That is the first awareness after Mahat Tattva, which comes into play. And then slowly, your five senses of perception start operating with your mind and intellect. Oh, then you say, I'm sleeping, I have to go to office at this time, and this is the time I'll take to get ready, so I should get up. Now your mind starts working, your intellect starts working, and your sense perceptions start working. So that is the another state. And then with this action, you put your karmendriya, your sense of action into place, and then you get up. So this is how it operates. The first few seconds or 1 or 2 minutes when you get up in the morning, this is how everybody operates. And if you observe it minutely, you will find that this is how exactly you operate. And then slowly, what happens? You put your, you know, sense of action into place. You take your shower, you put on your clothing, and you do whatever is required. You prepare your schedule, and then you start preparing for your office. So this is what action you do. And then once you go to office or wherever you work, where you are working, wherever you go there, or if you work from home, you do that, you start interacting with the rest of the world. That is the interaction which starts happening, which will give you Sukha and Dukha. So from that interaction onwards, the verse number 6 operates, that you have, with some interaction you get Sukh, with some interaction you get Dukha, and that whole modification in your mind starts working. And the operations and interactions which provide you Sukh, you want to have them more, so the desires come into place. The modifications and interactions which lead you to distress, you start hating them, so dress comes into place. And then the determination comes into place because of your desire to have something or not to have something. So that determination starts playing. So this whole Sthul Deha ka Pind starts operating in that fashion. If you observe your schedule in the first 2-3 hours of the day, you will find all these elements, all the 24 elements of the nature which are there. And then you will also find this, process which gives you Sukh, Dukh, Ichha, Dves, and Dhrati, all that come into place. And the interaction happens because of this Chetna, which is associated with your sense organs due to their origin, and they have this interaction with the gross world outside. So all these things lead us to go into this world and reap the harvest of our own actions and inactions, or whatever we do. So this is what these two verses, though they are very small verses, but they are perhaps very profound verses, some of the most profound writings I have seen ever. They explain the entirety of universe. They explain this world. They explain the fundamental elements of this world, and they explain how our body interacts with the rest of the world, and how we get into the process of pleasure and distress, and hatred and liking and greed, all those things which happen because of that. Then the second element which I mentioned before is because of the mixing of Kshetra and Kshetrajya, which is the impact of Maya. When you feel that your body is actually a Kshetrajya, we consider our body as Drashta. We do not do that backward journey. The backward journey will take us from eyes and ears. They will tell us mind can identify them, mind can see them. So they become actually Kshetra, and the mind becomes Kshetragya. And when you see mind from intellect, the intellect becomes Kshetragya and mind becomes Kshetra. And when you go back to the real Chaitanya, then you can feel that you can even observe the mind, intellect, all the sense organs and all the parts of your body separately, and they all become Drashya. And the Chaitanya is the only Drashta, which is the ultimate Drashta, and that is why it is called Paramatma. That is the last resort. From beyond that, you cannot do that backward journey. So this is what has been explained in these 6 verses, starting from the first, that idam sariram chetram, that is what he says first, and then he says that Kshetra and Kshetragya ka jo distinction hai, that has been told by variety of saints, by variety of scriptures in the past, and I am telling you that now. So this is what he told to Arjuna in brief. This is how the whole thing proceeded from one to another. Now, if we can keep these things in our mind, the 24 elements of the Kshetra, and how the modifications happen in our body because of the interaction with the outside world, then I think we can proceed very cleanly and very smoothly in the direction of Chaitanya, in the direction of pure consciousness, in the direction of what we call Paramatma. And once we start touching that Paramatma, then all these vikar, all these modifications will become unimportant for us. Then it will look like a leela, it would look like a play to us. That is why this word leela is very important, because the life of avatars has been told as leela, Ram leela or Krishna leela, because they did not get engaged into this world. They were just observing this world. They were in the pure consciousness in Chaitanya, and whatever was happening to them as leela, and whatever action they did was doing as leela. Then in our case also, like I, Gauri Shankar Gupta, when I play in a theater, for example, I go and play in a theater somewhere. I have a role. My name in that role could be, say, Lakshman. Now, if my role there is Lakshman, but as soon as I come out of the theater, I am Gauri Shankar Gupta. I am not Lakshman anymore. So you are Lakshman. I am Lakshman only in that theater. Similarly, when you play in this world, this game, you are playing this game with the body, and that body is like a play. But your Chaitanya is separate, your own self is separate, which is only an observer. And that realization, that feeling, will ultimately segregate you from the body. And then you will find the interaction of the body with the rest of the universe is basically like a leela, is like a play. It is not you who are playing that role. It is the body, and these 24 elements are playing that role, and these elements are playing role with other 24 elements which are existing elsewhere, because everybody is part of those 24 elements. So these 24 elements are playing with each other, and the Chaitanya is absolutely separate, doing nothing. It is only the observer, only the drashta. So once we reach that state, I think then it is clearly a realization. The state when you become one with the Chaitanya, then the rest of the universe would look like Leela. It would look simply a play, and you will not get engaged into this. You will not be party of Dukha and Sukha. Dukha and Sukha will become irrelevant to you, and then you will automatically get into what Lord Krishna has described in chapter 12, and he will describe briefly in this chapter also, that you go away from Garmi, Shardi, Mitra, Satru, Dukh, Sukh, all these dualities you will transcend automatically. Then you don't have to make an individual effort to transcend them. They will be automatically transcended because of this realization inside that you are separate, that the body is separate, these 24 elements are playing with the 24 elements, and you have no role in that whole process. So this is what this chapter of Bhagavad Gita in the beginning is telling you. And the second part, which we will cover in the next week, is what is knowledge, ज्ञान क्या है और अज्ञान क्या है. I think that is very important as well, because that will take us to this process in which we can distinguish between Kshetra and Kshetragya completely. If we can observe that Gyan and Agyan properly, and if we can identify that and we can analyze in our body whether we are in the path of Gyan or Agyan, then that will help us to reach a state where we can identify completely with our Chaitanya. So I will stop here because these verses are worth meditating on. I will request each one of you to meditate on these verses and to observe your own body and actions starting early in the morning for a little while, and you will realize that all this has been said is absolutely true. How the 24 elements come into play and how their interaction with the rest of the world is leading me to Dukha and Sukha and to desire and to hatred. All those things are happening because of that. And then slowly you will understand the functioning of the body and you will understand the nature of Maya. So thank you very much. If you have any queries, I will try to do my best to answer them. Thank you.